am Amy Vetter, and welcome to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. This valuable time is for you to pause in your day and go on your own self-journey. Discover the beliefs that are holding you back from living your best life at work and at home. Learn from the guests on this show as they share their inspirational stories on how they found ways to break internal beliefs that were no longer serving them. Because if you believe you can, you will. And our podcast begins now. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs, where I interview Richard Kopelman. He's twice named as the most admired CEO in Georgia and who's who in the accounting industry. He serves as CEO and Managing Partner of Aprio, LLP, a nationally recognized CPA-led business advisory firm. Prior to his role as a CEO, Richard served as a business advisor to clients doing business domestically and abroad in more than 40 countries, and he built and led Aprio's manufacturing and distribution group, increasing revenue by 800% in 14 years. In addition, Richard had the opportunity to serve on the corporate side, acting as a CFO of a tech startup. In 2010, Richard founded Next Generation Manufacturing, a business forum for Southeastern manufacturers to exchange best practices relating to innovation, people, and processes to create the next generation of manufacturing. In my interview with Richard, he shares his journey from helping his mom as a teenager with cold calling to spending the majority of his career at Aprio. During this interview, he opens up about what he has learned along the way that helped him achieve success as a leader and transform a firm to be ready for the future. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs. I'm here with Richard Kopelman. Richard, you want to give a little background on yourself before we start?
Sure, Amy. Thanks for having me today. My name is Richard Kopelman. I'm the Managing Partner and CEO at Aprio. We are a top 50 CPA-led advisory firm headquartered in Atlanta with offices in North Carolina, New York, Florida, and Alabama.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here with me. And I've known your firm for a long time, even before the name was Aprio, and seeing all the evolution. So I want to get into that later on, but first I want to start with your story. So give us a little background on yourself, where you grew up, what your family was like, what were your hobbies, that sort of thing when you started out. Did you want to be a CPA?
Always wanted to be an accountant.
Really?
Not a true story. So born in New York, and my parents, I always say, got their moving papers early. And so we moved to Florida well before they turned, 65 or 70 years old.
Yeah.
Which is sort of against the norm.
What part of Florida? I lived there.
North Miami Beach.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
South Florida. So grew up, for the most part, in a single parent household. My parents got divorced when I was very young. And when I was 13 years old, and I always credit my mom for my selling skills, she was selling prearranged funerals to the elderly that live on the beach in Miami.
Oh, wow. Okay.
AKA God's waiting room. And so I was her secret weapon. So when I came home from school, she would, I had a script and a list of names and phone numbers. And I was actually her appointment setter at 13 years old in the early 80s. So I guess she was violating child labor laws. But I got paid well.
Yeah.
And I learned to accept rejection, including people who would say, "No, ma'am, I'm not interested."
Exactly.
A little tough to take as a 13-year-old boy. Went to school at University of South Florida, moved to moved to Atlanta after I graduated. My dad had lived here and my brother was here and some family. I came up here, joined then Haba Farragut and Wynn, or HAW.
Oh, really? Okay, so this was your first job.
Worked for a small firm in Tampa for a year.
Okay.
While I was in school. Principally, this has been the only place that I've worked. Like many of our partners, we have been with the firm our entire career. So I'm coming up on, I just finished my 28th year.
Wow. And you don't hear that as much anymore, so.
You do not.
Yeah. So why did you choose accounting? So if you were doing, it's funny, I have similar background. my mom was in insurance and I would have to do the cold calling. And she actually had me call out of the phone book, but when I'd call, I'd have to say, you told me to give you a call back this week, where they kind of be confused, like, did I tell you to call back this week? I hated it so much.
It must have worked. The funny thing is that is still used today. I still get those phone calls.
Yeah. And then you're like, no, I didn't tell you to call me back this week. Yeah. So how did you end up in accounting? So how did that?
So I arrived at school because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go to college.
Yeah.
And I knew that right away I was not doing science. And
Yes.
so I ended up in the business school, and I called my dad was a small business owner. His entire life was always in retail.
Okay.
And I can remember the conversation. He said, you can just do accounting. You can always use it no matter what you do. It's the language of business. As we know, you have to understand the numbers. Those that don't usually struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what happened. I decided to go into accounting. It turned out that it was something that came to me fairly easily, naturally in school.
Yeah.
And then I figured I'd give it a shot. I never actually thought I would be in accounting, 28 years later.
Right.
Because in Atlanta in 1992, Buckhead was, anybody who knows the Buckhead area in
Yeah.
92 was amazing. It was an amazing place to be, single. So I was just here to have fun.
You just took a moment to go back to there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to go back a little bit.
It's interesting because so my mom, prior to being in insurance, owned maid services. So, and I remember she would take me to networking events, and I remember asking like the people she was networking with, like, what do you think I should do when I go to college? And they said the exact same thing, that, when you understand accounting, you understand how a business runs. But, since that time, I've rethought that and been like, that means accountants aren't helping the way that they should, because if another small business owner thinks you have to get a degree in accounting, then we're not like truly being advisors. Like, we've got to fill that gap so people don't feel like they have to get a degree in accounting to understand,
It's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
I like it. And you come from a long line of entrepreneurs. It sounds like you come from
Yes.
a lineage of entrepreneurship,
Yeah,
which is
similar.
great. That
Yeah.
explains a lot about you.
Yeah, and you. Yeah, because you've been very entrepreneurial in a CPA firm. So
We're doing our best.
So what was your track? So you went into HAW at the time.
Yeah, in those days, we were like, I think most firms are of that size. I think the firm was about 9 or 10 million in revenue then. So it was very much an eat what you kill, book a business firm.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to go work with a partner who's actually just retired the end of, well, he's retiring fully the end of this year, by the name of Rick Rubin. And Rick is and was a phenomenal mentor, taught me really everything I needed to know about how to actually care for clients
Mm-hmm.
and how to be their advisor. Went to work with him, and then we've been through, since I've been with the firm, several evolutions. And so the first one was to go into industry practices, and I ended up in our manufacturing and technology practice, ended up focusing in manufacturing, and I've spent really the last 15 years prior to becoming managing partner, pretty much, I would say 80% of the time serving manufacturers with a little bit of transaction processing in there
Mm-hmm.
as well, mixed with distribution. And that's where I spent most of my time. And I started a nonprofit 10 years ago. We'll celebrate our 10th anniversary in September, called Next Generation Manufacturing.
Okay. What's
Someone
that?
once told me, if you cannot find a place to market to the segment you are looking to market to, then you'll have to create it yourself.
Oh, well, there you go.
So I joined together with 7 other people, or 6 other people. There's 7 of us in total, and we were the founding sponsors of this association. And like I said, 10 years running, and we've hosted thousands of executives, C-level executives from manufacturing companies, mainly across Georgia and the Southeast, and helping them figure out what's the next generation of product, process, and service look like
Mm.
in their businesses. This is obviously a very interesting time because of COVID-19, about where that where we'll be able to, as an association, actually help these companies figure out, where to pivot.
Right.
It's a great community, like the CPA community. A lot of sharing that happens.
Yeah. So I want to go back to one comment that you said about the eat what you kill. I think this is an area of the professional development and the accounting profession that's just not discussed as the sales side and the business development side. Like we come in as subject matter experts, we, increase our technical expertise, but not everybody is taught how to sell. And it sounds like you had a good mentor, but what were some key things that helped you in that area besides your background of just understanding how to sell because of your parents? But
Yeah.
this is a like one of those things that just aren't talked about. Like
Well, throughout actually from the time I was 13 until I got to college, I called for my mom. Then I
Mhm.
had a car wash and wax route when I was 14, 15 years old. I used to ride around the neighborhood on my bicycle with buckets on the handlebars. And then I and then I went into the valet. I worked for a valet company, and I drove people to the I guess the statute has passed on this, but I used to drive people back and forth to the airport from condos on the beach. And so always was into different things. And in college, I waited tables, which I always felt like I was self-employed.
Yeah, I did that
So
too.
for for me, the great way to make money, right?
It was. I remember because you're making so much money as a college kid, than normal, and it was all, it was very hard to give that up. I remember asking another waiter that I worked with once. I said, "Are you in college?" And he said, "I took a semester off 6 years ago." And so,
Now he's trapped waiting
but
tables.
so many people get trapped in it because it's like, it's
It's good
hard.
money.
Yeah, exactly.
Good money, fun lifestyle, partying after the
Yeah.
shift is over at night. Um, yeah, interesting times.
Yeah.
So really from day one when I came into the firm, and we've always very much supported and provided training on business development. Even when I started, we had a head of marketing
Hmm.
back then. I think several people in the marketing department, and today I think I can't remember what the size of our total sales and marketing team is in terms of total people. Probably about, I think we have 12 people now in sales and marketing for the firm. Um, it was just something I did from the very beginning. In fact, I remember watching some of my coworkers go to lunch with each other, and on one hand, I felt left out
Hmm.
because oh, I wish I was going with them. And
Right.
on the other hand, I also said to myself, well, why are they doing that? Because they're never going to get business from somebody that they work with. Of course, now some of those people, obviously with the turnover that happens in public accounting, they end up in decision making
Right.
roles later, and you can get business from them. I didn't see that at the time. That was something that I missed. But I was spending my time, or I should say, and I was spending my time instead out meeting with our clients and their bankers and their lawyers. And it was really early in my career that business started coming in.
Hmm.
I would say within the first 2 years, 3 years.
Did
The
anyone tell you to do that, or you had?
Well, I got paid to do it because we still do, and we did then pay an origination bonus to
Yeah.
non-partners.
Okay.
So
So they
um,
told you that like on your orientation?
I don't remember exactly I don't remember when I learned it.
Yeah.
And I started January 6th, so I didn't start at a normal time. So I didn't have a normal orientation. But
Right.
but I knew that I was going to get paid for that. And I had been on commission waiting tables and
Right. You're like,
always had
why
been
not?
on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, that's a no brainer. I can make extra
Right.
money. In those days, I could make extra money working longer hours and bringing in business. So why not do both?
Yeah. That's cool. So, did you ever shadow anyone that was like a manager or partner and watch how they ran those meetings?
So I did. In fact, I learned early to dangle out the meat, so to speak.
Okay.
That doesn't sound right, but um, so our founding partner, Merrill Wynn, was one of our founding partners, and Jim Arrighetti both worked at the firm for for a while. In fact, Merrill Wynn still works with the firm. So I had the opportunity to work with them, and they were brilliant rainmakers, brilliant, especially Merrill Wynn. He was just phenomenal. And everybody in town wanted to get to him because of all of his contacts and relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got to the right level within a bank or a law firm, I would sort of dangle him out as a carrot. And so I used to go to these really cool lunches at really nice places when I was quite young, because I would connect Merrill Wynn to, or another senior partner, I use him as an example, with, let's say, the head of commercial lending in those days at South Trust Bank, which is no longer in existence. And we'd go to Vini Vidi Vici in Midtown Atlanta, which was a great Buckhead Life restaurant, and I'd get to go watch him in action.
Right. Yeah. So what did you learn from him?
Wow, that's a great question. He still does have a way of telling stories. I would say the things I learned not only from him, but from others,
Mm-hmm.
is telling stories and focusing on solutions.
Mm-hmm.
I think too much in our profession, we focus on, and you were saying it earlier, we focus on the things we're doing,
Right.
and the things we're issuing, an audit, a tax return, not the outcomes we're achieving for clients, which are helping them achieve their dreams.
Right.
Right? We're helping them make sure they don't overpay their taxes. Make sure we help them manage their risks so they don't end up in a situation where they they have too much inventory. Whatever it might be, right? We could come up with a list. I had a call earlier today with a prospect, and it was all about how do we help them maximize their sale price
Right.
in a transaction they're going through, versus the thing they called us about, which was, can you do an audit?
Exactly. It's getting to what they're staying up at night about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. In fact, we have 30 fundamentals that back up Aprio. We
Mm-hmm.
call it the Aprio way. And one of them is about the fact that we don't sleep when our clients aren't sleeping,
Oh,
which
that's
really means we haven't slept for the last 8 weeks,
exactly.
mainly because of the PPP loan process.
I know. I was just talking about that because people that aren't close to it, are like, oh, well, just be forgiven. It's like, there's a lot going on with that right now.
A lot of people are trying to figure out the forgiveness process.
Yeah. So where did the leadership start taking hold in your career, and how did you adjust to that? Because it's a big difference between being an individual contributor and taking on leadership responsibility.
Yeah, I would always set very, very high goals for myself, and I guess there's a balance between being arrogant and confident and being focused. So I was always focused, and as we went through our transition, I started with the firm, we were 10 million, and this year we should be somewhere between 120 and 130 million.
Oh, wow.
And there was a point in time where I was working with a partner who decided to go work for a client, and we were kind of co-leading the manufacturing practice at that time. So I remember I walked into then managing partner John Miller's office, and John was a phenomenal leader, perfect leader at the time. He led our firm, and I went in and I said, "Well, John," I said, "Clay's going to be leaving, as you know, and I'll be happy to step into the role of leading the manufacturing practice, and I'll take care of all of those clients." And he looked at me and he said, "Okay." And I always, I believe in never selling past the close. So I turned around, I said, "Thank you." I turned around and I walked down, I went back to my office and said, "Okay, now how are we going to do this?" And that, I think, was, part of maybe the start of not just leadership, but management.
Mm-hmm.
And then, started pulling people together to, develop that as a service for the firm. But I never went into a management role within the firm. I didn't run a practice area. I didn't run I didn't run a team within one of our practices, such as audit or tax.
Mm-hmm.
I ran this niche, and I think I did it okay.
Yeah.
Grew it pretty significantly until I stepped out of that role and became managing partner. And about 3 years before I became managing partner, I joined the Vistage Group.
Okay.
which is a CEO peer group for those that aren't familiar
Hmm.
with Vistage, national and international organization. And I did that just to be around other leaders and get exposed to things. I
Hmm.
think too often people are sitting inside their four walls. Sometimes I feel that way working from home now, remotely,
Yeah,
sitting
exactly.
literally sitting inside four walls. Um, I think we spend a lot of time inside, and we only know what we know.
Hmm.
And so I've always been very curious, sometimes maybe too curious,
Hmm.
to get out and just ask a lot of questions and learn about a lot of different things that have nothing to do with accounting.
Yeah, but it will help you along the way.
It's
Um,
definitely informed my approach to the business, decision making,
mhm.
direction.
Well, and something I want to just go back a little on of what you said is when you said never sell past the close. Um, you didn't know that you were prepared to take that job. You knew you wanted the job. And I think, I've had a lot of people that have worked for me in the past where I wanted them to take the next role and they're like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I know everything I need to know. And you really learn on the job a lot of times because you've never done that job before and have to be open to being vulnerable to the fact that you are not an expert when you walk into a new leadership role. So I think it's an important thing for people to hear, especially women, I'll say, as well, that, if we don't have all the boxes checked, a lot of times we don't go for the job because we're like, am I qualified and that sort of thing. So I think, just understanding that mindset of like, but I want the job, so then I'll figure it out.
Well, I think you spoke at one of our leadership conferences where
Yes.
we had actually a lady come and speak to us about mindset, about the growth mindset versus fixed mindset. You actually just brought that back. But whenever I am in front of our team and I'm talking about, I'm doing either some training or mentoring, or I'm just sitting in a group doing a town hall. If I get to a point where I'm providing some advice, a lot of times I'll come back and I'm not a very good artist, but I'll draw a stick figure with a box around the stick figure. And I think a lot of people put themselves inside of a box with certain limitations.
Mhm.
And I'll draw two size boxes, one very close to the person and one very, very far away. And if I knew the things today, if I knew then what I know today, I might not have gone in and even asked that question.
Right.
And there are several, I can think of, that moment or the time I walked into the to someone's office that works for the state of Georgia and asked if I could speak at the Georgia Manufacturing Appreciation Week luncheon that's held by the governor,
Yeah.
where the governor speaks at this meeting of
Yeah.
2,000 people, um, and I got them to let me. I think I was 28 years old, and I got them to let me speak at that. It might have been 32. It was either 28 or 32. I'll go with 32. I got them to allow me to speak and give the highlights from our Georgia manufacturing survey that we do with Georgia Tech, and I got them to allow me to speak about that about 15 minutes before the governor went on stage.
Wow.
And I think back on that today, and you know, I probably had no business speaking there. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't, but they let me. So
Well, and if you didn't ask,
you would never have gotten there.
right, exactly.
And look, you have to back it up at the end of the day, right?
Right.
You've got to take the chance, and then you've got to back it up, and it takes a lot of hard work,
Yeah.
but it
So
can be a lot of fun.
I want to talk about two evolutions, I think, as far as your firm. So I've been close to stuff that you've been doing at your firm for a long time. And I know you've been one of the ones really trying to push into technology and even changed your branding, which I'd love to, hear that story of the why behind it. So there was the future that you had to lead a whole firm through, and you've got traditional accountants versus ones that are progressive and how you bridge that. And then we've got the second big change over the last few months of okay, that's what we thought, and then this is what I'm running now. So maybe if you can talk about how you've led through change, because I think, if any time this is a huge moment with that.
Yeah. So maybe I'll mention, why don't I tell two stories about leading through change, and then you can
Okay.
point me to maybe a direction you'd like me to head. So one is the branding change, right? Changing from Hey Fair Getting a Win, or HAW, to Aprio, especially with founding partners or children of founding partners active in the firm, is an interesting move to make. And I credit all of those people for not just being cooperative, but supportive through the process.
Mm-hmm.
And when we walked into the room as a partner group for a partner meeting to vote on the name change in accordance with our operating agreement, um, the whole process took 7 minutes. So why did it take 7 minutes? In fact, I even stopped the meeting to say, doesn't anybody want to talk about this? And they said, we've talked about it enough. And so it's all about, I believe trust and communication rise and fall together.
Mm-hmm.
And that works in personal relationships as well as business relationships.
Yep.
So I've been really focused through these changes on just communicating, communicating, communicating. And so for the name change, we had lots of small group meetings with partners to walk them through the why and the how. And the why was very simply as we wanted to become, and we are becoming, something very different than what we were, which is a global, forward-thinking, disruptive, advisory-driven organization in how we're serving our clients and talking in the marketplace. And so we wanted to have a name that went along with that brand image. And so that's really how we,
And what is
came
the
to this
name?
point.
Like, what does that name represent?
Yeah, so Aprio comes from two root words, and we had to drop off some letters and change some things around, but it comes from Cap and Aria. Cap is head, and Aria, the Song of the Hearts. And it comes from many, many interviews that our brand consultants did with clients and stakeholders internally and externally about how they view the brand. And how they viewed it was that we bring our technical expertise to the table, but we bring our heart with us in terms of how we care for our clients. And that's where the name was born.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, did you talk to staff during this as well, or was it
Yeah,
mostly from the partner group?
no. We interviewed stakeholders throughout the entire, Aprio world, clients, vendors, partners, business partners, partners of the firm, all levels of folks within the organization.
And
Yep.
what kind of benefit did you see from doing that? Did it change mindset?
I think we could not have done what we've done over the last 4 years, principally really three and a half years at this point. I don't think we could have done it at the pace we've done it without changing the brand, the image, the name, having the 30 fundamentals of behavior the Aprio way. All of that is guiding the mindset, the brand position, our approach, what we're willing to do, not willing to do, what other people are willing to do with us.
Right.
Right. When I used to go out with the Hey Farragetti Win name to talk to firms about merging, they wanted to know if it was going to become Hey Farragetti Win Smith.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you show up with the Aprio brand, it's really not even a question.
Yeah. So, what went wrong? Like, what would you tell people to watch out for when you're going through something like this?
What went wrong during the
Just
the
the
branding?
whole, yeah, the change management process. Like, what are some things that people should watch out for when they are looking to do massive change?
So I got to tell you, and this comes from others, not from me. Uh, I actually think it went really, really well.
Yeah.
We definitely learned some things along the way. We probably could have done it a little bit faster. We We could have ordered less stationery and envelopes in advance of the name change because we got stuck with a lot of inventory of business cards and things like that. We did our best to control it, but we didn't do it early enough because we saved money probably buying it more bulk in
Right.
advance. The website was probably the digital assets was probably the thing that we could have done a better job on
Hmm.
because we had to completely obviously abandon the old name, the old domain. Well, we kept the domain, but we pointed it to the new domain.
Right.
And there were certain things we lost on Google rankings and things like that
Yeah.
that it took us a little while to fix.
Yeah.
That was one that was one thing we learned. I learned that we could keep a secret because no partner leaked it. And when we went into the room in December to announce it to the entire firm, everybody was truly surprised. So I learned that the partners could keep a great secret.
Well, it goes back to trust and communication, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So, with the branding, you started going down a route to move into more digital transformation and advisory work. So, what were some of the things that you put into place or that you were trying to change to?
Yeah. So we've added a lot of new services within our advisory practice, and we've done since the name change, we've completed seven, it's either six or seven merger and acquisitions, two in the Atlanta market, four in the Atlanta market, one in North Carolina, and one in Birmingham. And then we actually just tucked in yesterday a partner and a couple of additional team members into the Birmingham office. So we just did a small transaction, the first one here in 2020. From an advisory standpoint, we've added things like treasury optimization. We've significantly grown our transaction advisory and private equity practice. We've added business technology consulting.
Mhm.
Um, did I mention treasury optimization?
Yeah,
I
yes, you
mentioned that
did.
one. Okay. Financial consulting services. We've just inked a deal, which a press release will go out next week on. We have formed a joint venture to provide R&D tax credit services in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
So these are
Yeah.
some of the things that we have
So
done
with all,
and
so what
added,
I'm
and
hearing,
data analytics. I can't leave off
data
data
yeah.
analytics and robotic process automation are services we've recently added, and we've also significantly increased the number of Fortune 1000 and publicly traded companies that we're representing in that advisory space over the last 3 years.
So with all of this that you're listing, so you changed your brand and then you've had about 6 or 7 mergers plus delivering all these services. To me, I'm
Oh,
hearing,
by the way, Amy, hold on. I left out digital marketing.
yeah,
We launched
okay.
digital marketing a year ago, and we also acquired and are building out a content company called CEO Tools by Aprio.
Oh, that's cool. Very cool.
We even
Um,
published a book. You can find it on Amazon.
Very nice.
I'll
So,
send you a copy.
yeah,
I
well,
think I
yeah,
gave you a copy. Didn't I give you a copy when you were in Atlanta?
I don't think so.
No, I'm going to send you a copy. Make a
Okay.
note and send you a
Well,
copy.
and you'll have to give me the name. We'll put it in the show notes so people will know as well. But what I'm hearing is a lot of mergers of culture. So
Yes.
people were in all of these different firms, plus you're doing this transformation in your own firm. How has that been to create any scale and consistency between all of these different practices?
So a lot of communication. In fact, since COVID-19 broke and we shut down we tested working remotely in early March.
Hmm.
And that afternoon, I sent out a video to the entire firm that it worked really well, and you should feel comfortable staying home. And we principally at that point scaled back the offices substantially, even prior to the official shutting down of the various states that we operate in, and people working remotely on a mandatory basis. So a lot of it's been through communication. We have a little bit of special sauce relative to how we roll out our culture.
Okay.
And our culture is something that we constantly work on. So the fundamentals aren't, in fact, behind me, I have my little fundamental card. Uh,
Mhm.
it's not just on a card, and it's not something that we just have laying around. It is embedded in our language. It's embedded in our proposals. It's embedded in our website. It's embedded in our offer letters. It's embedded in our day-to-day work, and that is, I think, something unique to Aprio and how we're bringing these cultures together.
Mhm.
And I think COVID has, without a doubt, accelerated that in a big way
As a positive
as a
because everyone
positive.
had to change. So,
Yeah, I mean, I would say we're working across business lines stronger today than we ever have. And I think we were doing it well before, but I think we're doing it out, in an outstanding way right now. The team is doing amazing things.
yeah. So, what have you had to shift as far as your leadership during this pandemic?
So we shifted to daily huddles in the morning.
Mhm.
So we have a leadership team that is cross-functional by practice area and by functional area within the operations of the firm.
Mhm.
So we have a standing 30-minute meeting. Sometimes they last 5 minutes, sometimes they last 30. Very focused on what are the problems, what are the solutions, and how do we implement them?
Yeah.
Not, just blah 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 sharing information. And we have various huddles happening around the firm. That's the start of it. And then we shifted some folks out of their day-to-day role into leadership roles for the PPP loan forgiveness and for the Main Street Lending Program, so that we could educate everybody internally, educate everybody internally, educate our clients, and get out in the marketplace with it. We've held at least 30 webinars in the last 8 weeks, and we've had literally tens of thousands of visitors participating in those webinars. I think the largest one was 2,200 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that has definitely been a thing that not everybody has grasped onto, but is really important is the outreach versus waiting for a client to call you.
So the day we went home, the first day we were officially all at home, we had a partner call, and we have one every week. I have a board call every week, and I have a partner call every week, and then we have a longer board meeting monthly. Um,
Mhm.
on the first two partner calls, I asked every partner between themselves and their directors or senior managers, but really the partners at a minimum, to pick up the phone and talk to every single client at least once. And we've been doing that every, I would say, 3 weeks
Mhm.
for the last 9 weeks, where we've been on the phone talking to clients because circumstances for clients changed. I
Right.
mean, you could talk to a client one day, and I remember doing this with an engineering firm, and everything was fine, and he was wondering what are you guys all worried about? And then a week later, oh my God, the world is falling apart. My
Yeah.
clients are canceling work, and I need a PPP loan.
Right.
So things were changing rapidly. I think in some cases they still are. A
Mhm.
little bit of maybe a leveling off, but that was the key. Again, is communication, right? I wanted to make sure we were building that trust with our clients at a deep, deep level during these uncertain times where they were, in some cases, deers in headlights, and really needed a lifeline.
Yeah.
Sometimes
I-
just someone to talk to.
Well, and that's being an advisor, right? This is where kind of where we began.
Yes.
And whether it's a crisis or not a crisis, it's a good way to be with clients is proactively reaching out to them, showing that you care, that you're just checking in, making sure things are okay. And usually there's something on their mind. Most entrepreneurs have, no lack of things to talk about with their business.
And they don't have anybody to talk to inside their
Right.
business,
Mm-hmm.
and unless they're part of a peer group or have friends
Right.
that are in the same situation, they really have no one else to turn to.
Right.
And that's our role to business owners.
Yeah. And it's a matter of dedicating time on your calendar to do it, because we can always blame being busy because there's plenty of work in this line of business, but it's actually prioritizing the time to actually do the outreach, which is
You
hard.
definitely you definitely have to make it a priority, and we have made it and continue to make it a priority to be reaching out to clients.
Yeah. So I want to just ask you a couple quick fire questions.
Okay, here we
All right.
go.
So pick a category: family and friends, money, spiritual, or health.
Well, I hope this is okay to say. You spilled the beans earlier that usually everybody picks family and friends. Sometimes they pick money and spirit, but no one ever picks health, or very few people.
Yeah.
So just for fun, I'll go with, I don't know what it's going to be like, but I'll go with health.
Okay. Love it. All right. So things or actions I don't have that I want with my health.
Actions that I don't have with my health. I haven't yet gone to go get tested to see if maybe by chance I have the antibodies for COVID-19, and I
Yeah.
still don't have a completely flat stomach. I don't have that six pack. So I'm working on. I may be too old to get one of those, but hopefully not. So
Never say never.
that's now you're getting personal.
Yeah. You went there. So things or actions I do have that I want.
I got this year the coolest thing. Or last year, I have what do you call it? Concierge doctor. And it's the
Uh,
coolest.
yeah.
It's the coolest thing to actually be able to talk to a physician
Yes.
and get
And that's sad. This
and
is what
really
we're talking about with accounting, right? Like you have to pay extra for a doctor to get them to call you back.
well. Let me tell you, it could teach us a lot of things in our profession about how we operate, because it's a great way to have a relationship with a physician. I find it
Yeah.
very refreshing.
And you get in that day and yes.
I can text her on the weekend and she'll text me back.
Yeah.
It's like when my mom had to take me to my doctor's when I was 8 years
Mhm.
old because my brother jumped on the couch and I was underneath it and my chin split open and I had to get stitches. You can't do that today. You can't go to can't
No.
call your doctor at home and meet him or her at the office on a
Right.
Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah. And
So
people pay, but if you know you have less clients, you have more time to do
exactly.
this. Yes.
And see, we can learn a lot. We should have,
Yeah. Yeah.
CPA VIP.
There you go. Next service line. We just developed it for you. Things or
It
actions
could
I
or
don't,
it might already be in the hopper. You don't
yeah,
know.
possibly. All right. Things or actions I don't have that I don't want as far as my health.
I don't have that I don't want. I mean, I don't want COVID.
Right.
I don't want any kind of I don't want to have any major illness.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
an easy one.
Yeah. All right. Last one. Things or actions that I do have that I don't want.
I have high cholesterol and I don't want high cholesterol.
Well,
I
all
have it
right.
under control, but now we've gotten way too personal. Now I know why people don't
They
select
don't
health.
pick health. It's
I
amazing
should
what
come
you
up with
discover with these questions.
I should
So,
come up with another one. How can I replace that one?
okay, sure.
Uh, I had melanoma when I was very, very young.
Mm,
Very young, as I was 35 years old, and my children, my twins that are now 21, were 6 or 7 or something at the time. So
yeah,
kind of a scary time.
that
And
is.
I learned two really important things that I want to pass on to everybody. One is buy as much life insurance as you can when you're healthy, because when you have something like melanoma, you cannot buy life insurance. So
Yeah,
that was a pretty scary,
yeah,
time period.
yeah.
Um, and the other thing is, I implore everybody to put sunscreen on and make sure you have sunscreen that works. That has the right kind of ingredients,
Yes,
not this crappy stuff that they sell you know, at the grocery store. You
right.
need good, high quality sunscreen,
Yeah.
and wear sun shirts
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
and wear
Yeah,
sun shirts because melanoma is a killer.
yeah.
And I had to go get chest X-rays every 6 months after that for 5 years. And it's a
Wow,
scary thing anybody who's survived cancer knows that that's a scary thing to have to go do. Um,
absolutely.
and thankfully, have never had another one since.
That's really good.
Um,
Yeah.
so I want to just tell everybody, make sure you wear sun shirts, good sunscreen, hats, take care of your skin because it can show up in really weird places. And everybody should go see a dermatologist every 6 months.
Yeah.
Well, maybe once a year. Normal people can go once a year.
Yeah.
I have to go every 4 months.
Yeah. No, but it's good. Very good advice. So, is there anything that you want to make sure people come away with from this conversation that we haven't covered, or you want to emphasize as we close it out?
Look, I think our profession is going to go through massive changes. I think COVID's going to accelerate it. Technology, people, and when I say technology, it's everything across the organization. It's not just where your data sits and what software you're using, but it's the plumbing inside your organizations and how everything is or is not connected in terms of being able to analyze your business. And that goes not just for us, but for our clients. I think that's going to make or break businesses over the next 3 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And those that can't adapt and adopt the the mindset to move in that direction, I think are going to really struggle with those that can, because the world is going to change, and we may have hit the peak in February of 2020. Might have been the peak in the world of the number and quality of face-to-face meetings that we will ever have had in the world. That because of travel and airplanes and everything,
Mm-hmm.
sitting actually face to face with somebody as often as we did,
Right.
as deeply as we did,
Mm-hmm.
we may have hit the peak of that in February of 2020. And if that's the case, and the low point was, let's say, 2 weeks ago, where
Mm-hmm.
no one left their homes, what does it look like over the next 10 years? It doesn't go back to where it was.
Right.
And I think about my 13-year-old who has, only seen a few very close friends over the last 8 weeks. What is he going to be like when he's an adult?
Right.
How is this going to inform his decision making, his mindset, his approach? And I know we have to adapt and adopt. We have to unlearn everything we learned about how we run our business and communicate with our clients. We have to unlearn all of that and relearn it.
Yeah, it's funny you say that about the future generations. I had this conversation with my 15-year-old saying, you know, this is going to affect so many generations going forward. It's like, our grandparents with the depression that would keep the money in the coffee cans in their
Right.
house because they didn't trust banks. And then future generations didn't understand like why they were like that. Well, this is going to affect mindset in a different way where their kids are going to be like, why do you do that? Or why are you worried about touching somebody? Or,
It's going to affect everything. It's going to affect everything.
yeah,
What is New York City going to look like in a year, right? Or
right.
are people moving from not just New York City? I don't want to pick on New York City
But
because
condensed
because
area.
I love New York,
Yeah.
but yeah, how does this impact urban? There was this big flight to urban spaces over the last 10 years,
Yes.
and we have plenty of clients that have benefited from that from a business and real estate standpoint. What happens, is that a complete shift?
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
what do
Well,
banks look like post PPP loans?
yeah, right. Well, this has been a great conversation. So many great nuggets for people to take away and learn. So thank you so much, Richard, for being on today.
Well, the Amy Vetter, I had a great time. Thank you for inviting me. Always a pleasure to see you and spend time with you. And thank you for everything you're doing for the profession. And I enjoy reading your blog. So hopefully everybody's following you regularly.
Oh, well, thanks. And now is our time for mindful moments of this interview with Richard. And I love the beginning of this interview, just talking about his beginnings and how it helped him later in business development by starting out cold calling with his mom and also working in Atlanta with his father. Really learning what it takes as an entrepreneur and in business development to really get things going, I think is one of those skills that are left for people to figure out along the way and not realize that in most jobs that we do, we need sales and business development in order to be able to do our jobs well, whether that means helping influence people to a result that we want to get, or actually selling to customers, these skills are something that we can never get enough of, and always are learning more along the way and never know where they're going to pop up. And when Richard talked about his start, at the time was a firm, his firm is currently Aprio, but at the time was HAW. He started out with everybody else, and what he talked about was how he saw his coworkers going to lunch together and felt left out, because he was really looking at how he could move business development even in the early stages of his career. And I think it's an important observation to realize that no matter what level you are, this is an important thing to be looking out for, of how you can develop business, because it's not just our expertise that helps move us forward, but it's also when we're helping the business overall. And I loved his term about dangle out the meat. So how he was able to get some of these corporations and leaders to lunch when he didn't have the same kind of titles was, dropping that carrot about having his partner come join them if they would have this lunch together. And I think all of us taking those risks, and what's the worst that can happen is that someone says no, but in the opportunity that they say yes, how those kinds of relationships actually influence our success, not only in the present moment, but also create relationships into the future. So we also talked about not only that introductory period of how you get someone to the table, but also not selling past the close. So if you're setting goals for yourself, like Richard was, to move into leadership positions and get himself where he wanted to be, one of the things that we talked about was that you didn't have to have every skill or know how to do everything in order to take on that next job. And so when we talked about not selling past the close, he got his answer, he got what he wanted, and then it was time for him to figure out, now how am I going to do this? And I know we don't usually see that with people, that we don't know that side that's happening internally for leaders, taking on new roles when they're trying to learn it, because we all have to put up this front. And so when you're looking at people that you admire, sometimes you think they must already know this stuff, or how did they even know it? And it's really by experience. And having enough faith in yourself that you can take on that next role and know that you will be successful because you're a hard worker and you know how to use your resources. And that was one thing that was another really big lesson in this discussion, was the relationships and the networking that Richard has done along the way, and even to now, to ensure that he could close the next sale, but he could also be able to be successful in the different roles that he's had in leadership positions, because you can never do something alone. You need people around you that support you. And that really came into play when he was taking the firm into this rebranding of coming into Aprio, and having to ensure that everybody was going to support that, especially people that have been part of this family firm for years and years and years. And the way that he talked about this was really making sure that they trusted you and you over communicated, and communicate with people in small groups, one-on-one, and in bigger groups, so that you give people opportunity to communicate to you in the way that they need to communicate. Not everybody is comfortable to communicate in a large group, and some people need that one-on-one time to get their ideas across or their concerns across. And if you're going to really actively try to work change into an organization, it's important that it's not a one-size-fits-all. And I think he really demonstrated that this was all about making sure that people were heard, that they over-communicated, and brought people along the way so that everyone felt good about the final decision of them moving forward. Now, really the biggest thing that came out of this for me was truly the communication. And now that we're in this new way of working remotely, for some of us have been working remotely for years and years, but when you're actually working with everyone remotely, that is different for us all, that communication has become even more important than before. And we have to find human ways to do that. And I think, he talked about some ways that he's implemented in the business about making sure that they have these daily huddles and that they are having more education that's happening right now instead of less. And I think a lot of times we get so buried in the work, we forget that people need to be supported all along the way. And it's important that we are providing education and training opportunities at this time. But one of the most important things that I love that he was implementing is that he told every partner in the firm to call each client at least once every 3 weeks. That proactive communication is so important to make sure that people feel like you care. And it's more than an email. An email is nice. But when you actually pick up the phone and make and extend yourself and are available for someone to ask questions proactively, that is when we are truly advising people that we're truly that trusted person in their business, but also from a personal standpoint, so that they know whatever happens into the future, that you are there to support them and you're also thinking about them at the same time. So really think about, at leaving this interview today, how you can get back to really over communicating, which might seem like over communicating to you, but might be just right for the other person, and how you can make people feel that they're important, their ideas are important, and when you take their ideas in, how you respond back to let them know that they were heard, and what kind of change or no change are you going to make based on that, but at least giving them the explanation, being transparent, and not forgetting about that human need of connection. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. I hope you will take a moment to pause before entering back into your day to reflect on this podcast and note 1 to 2 actions you are inspired to do from today's conversation that you could incorporate into your life. To read the full blog and listen back to this episode or any other, you can find them at www.amyvetter.com/Breaking Beliefs podcast and related videos on my YouTube channel. For daily inspiration, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Amy Vetter CPA. I hope that you will choose to like this and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and more, so that you can join us for more inspiration on our next episode.